All right, everybody, welcome back to the Pakcast. This is the Ask Animal segment. I am your host. My name is Joseph Percher. As always, I'm accompanied by my co-host, Gary G6 Turner. And then today we have a special co-host, Evan Centopani, with us. So thanks, Ev.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So obviously your plans for the year, big comeback, much awaited comeback, and then now the world shuts down during it. So the plan originally was New York, and that was May 16th, and then now they've moved it back to, I might get this wrong, August 8th, or what was it?
Yep.
Okay.
That's right.
So, you have your ongoing series with us called The Build. For those of you guys that have not seen that, check that out on the Animalpak YouTube page. It's an awesome series Ev's been doing. So I know that you've touched on a lot of that stuff there, but for anyone that didn't see that or hasn't seen The Build yet, New York gets pushed back. Where are you at when they announced that, and what was the plan of attack then once they moved it?
I think at the time that I heard the announcement, I was like just over 6 weeks out.
Yeah.
And, it didn't bother me, to be honest, because I wouldn't mind having some extra time. I mean, not that I need more time to get in shape or anything like that, but, I wouldn't mind a little bit more time, to pound on my legs. And my training's been getting better every week. And every week, like, my legs look better, more balanced. So now, at the time when I heard the announcement to go from having 6 weeks to going to have like 18, it's all good from my perspective. So rather than, I know some of the guys prepping for that show and some of the guys I follow that are prepping for other shows decided to ramp things back up and catch a rebound. And, they put on like 20 pounds or, whatever it was, something to that effect. But rather than do that, I decided to just keep dieting and continue to get in shape. And once I'm in shape, I'd like to, it's actually already happened. It just kind of is natural. It always happens in a prep. As I get in better shape and get closer to the show, I find myself adding more food just because I'm able to get away with it. My body's just eating it up. So I wouldn't mind the opportunity to test essentially how much my body can handle, because what I envision is just getting fuller and fuller and harder while maintaining and possibly even getting leaner.
Yeah, all that sounds pretty good.
in theory.
So at this point, you're still just pushing, the goal is to get in true contest shape and then see where it goes from there. If that means that food needs to come up at that point and you almost kind of grow into the show, then so be it. So are you going to shoot for that Boston show then?
Probably not. New York
so is still
really
New York. Still New York. Yeah.
Yeah, New York is what I had my heart set on. New York kind of has a significance to me in that it's where I did my first amateur show. It's where I did my first pro show. And it only seems natural to have it be where I do my comeback. So I don't know, maybe it's just, and plus, I don't know, like sometimes I just get my head set on something and then, I don't know. That's what it is.
Oh, that's a move. Yeah.
Evan, do you think that there's a certain, and this is like a question that a lot of like the amateur guys have that have their shows being pushed back and they really don't know when they're going to be able to get in. Is there a time frame that you think being in prep is too long? I mean, you got 18 weeks, but you've been going for X amount of weeks now in anticipation that you'd be 4 weeks out now. Is there like, if guys are getting into prep now for the fall time, and that's 20 weeks away, and then they cancel shows till December, or they cancel shows altogether in 2021, are guys going to do you think that there's too far to go, say, to wrap it around into 2021 for an early show then? Is there like a diminishing return, do you think?
Well, there's, I guess, a couple thoughts. First off, obviously, we're all facing a certain amount of uncertainty. So the way I see it, people say, well, you don't want to diet for nothing or whatever it is, but I don't see it that way. I see it as an opportunity to get in great shape And, just the whole dieting contest prep process is a valuable process. At least for me, I always get better when I'm dieting. A lot of my aches and pains go away. My training is perfect. My nutrition is perfect. And coming out of that, it's always an opportunity to rebound. As for dragging that out, like you said, does it turn into a 25-week thing? Is it too long? That really depends, I think, on the individual and how it is that you prep. If you're somebody who really, you kind of do some crazy stuff, then I'd probably say, punishing your body or subjecting your body to that, and obviously I'm talking, I guess chemicals here. If you're someone who really does crazy stuff, then that's certainly something to consider. But I think, at least based on my experience, the point at which you get in really great shape, you can back off on a lot of that stuff. Let food do a little bit of work, especially if you're catching a rebound and you've done well. You should be able to stay pretty lean, grow, and be on a very minimal amount of stuff at the same time. And then, you could, if you can ride that for a period of say 8 weeks, and then you could, sorry, I got a tickle in my throat. Pick that back up and, ramp things back up if you need to. So A, I think it depends on how you prep. And B, I think that if you can push it for a period of time, then pull back, give your body a break, but still reap the benefits of all that, and then bring it back in. I still think a prolonged, prep could be very feasible.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm right now. I'm getting ready to start a prep for the North Americans, which is in September, and I've already had many of the pessimists that say, "Why are you going to start a prep? They're going to cancel the whole season." And while that may be true, there is a chance of that happening. I've been in almost a 2-year off season already in a huge surplus. I mean, my body fat has gotten a little out of control at some points, and I'm starting to creep it down now, but I tell myself, I can't go for a third year of off season right now. What am I going to do? Go 340 pounds? I said, I can feel, but I'm not going to add much more muscle being in this surplus. I think even running a prep and there not being a show and then rebending out and then quickly, even if it was like an 8-week rebound, 10-week rebound and go into 2021, right. And then I won't be fat in that 8 to 10 weeks and then bring it down. And then you got shows like the Arnold Amateur 2021. There's options there. If hopefully everything's back to normal by then.
I mean, if you do that, if you prep for the North Americans, like you're, like you were really getting on stage, and you get yourself down to that crazy condition, and then you rebound, and like you said, take 8 or 10 weeks, you're going to be so good going into that 2021 season. There's really, I can't see any downside to it. The only thing I could say is if someone watching this, if they're on an absolute tear right now and they're growing, they're doing great in the gym, and they're contemplating a prep, I would say, you know what? I wouldn't prep anyways, regardless of the uncertainty of the season. So take advantage of that. If you're someone else who you've had a long off season, you kind of hit the wall, you're thinking about doing a prep, I would prep anyways.
Yeah. At this point, it's a more enhanced mini cut. People like to throw those mini cuts there. This would be like a real cut. So I'm mentally ready. I can't carry this shit around any longer.
Yeah, there's going to be a diminished return.
I feel
for
so
you.
Better
when I do it. Yeah. There's going to be a diminished return for you too, Gary, at this point. Like you said, what is a third year tacked on when there was no, extreme change to force some type of extreme adaptation. Like now you're just kind of adding pennies on top of what you've already saved. Whereas like, you bring it down and get the harder you bring it down right now, and that's how I'm viewing it for myself too. Like Ev, you and I have talked about it. The harder you bring it down and the crazier shape you get in, I'm just viewing that as it springs you for a crazier rebound. Then the better shape you get into, now you're looking at maybe a 10, 12, 14-week rebound where because you were so peeled and dug out and it was an extended, maybe longer prep than what was normal, you're setting yourself up to
would just way overcompensate.
let the food and the training grow you and then get everything else healthy. So that's
Yep.
kind of how I viewed it too. So, you know,
Yep.
it's good to hear that, you know, other people have come up with these different plans of attack. So you were talking about then, like, so getting in shape and then, you know, you want to hit a big rebound, regardless of when that is, or, you know, what show it winds up being, or if they cancel all the shows and you just get into, you know, what your nastiest condition is. How in the past, and then maybe how this time will it be different? How have you approached your rebounds? Because there's, you know, like with everything else in this sport that we do, there's a million different ways that you can do it. And there's some guys first week after, I want you to put body fat back on to where you're now safe and strong training, and then we ride that out as long as we can. So I'm curious to hear what your strategies have been with that.
Well, in this instance, because I'll be between, we're still waiting to go into a show. I don't know that I'll go for a full on rebound, but what I would begin doing is, you know, and based on what I'm doing right now, I have a fair idea of what I can get away with nutritionally. So I would begin just adding more food gradually and just watching how my body responds. If I keep getting better and better, and I'm not even, the scale isn't even moving, then I know I still have even more, you know, room to play, keep adding more food. So it'll kind of just be an experiment of slowly, gradually adding, just to see what the full tolerance / capacity is, with the goal being to get better and better and better. You know, maybe if I end up putting on, say, 5 pounds, but I look bigger and harder and, you know, just that much better, well, then maybe I would see what another 5 pounds does. If I start going backwards, then I would pull it back. So it's really just going to be a balancing act rather than just like a full on rebound, I think.
Yeah. And in that instance, you know, you're, you know, hovering, I think you said around 270, pretty damn close to being in shape. You know, 3 to 5 pounds back on in the right spots there.
Right.
With that current look, it doesn't take much, man. That's going to be a dramatic change to the look.
Right. And, you know, it's not something I've ever done before,
I was
because
going to ask you
anytime,
if you've ever done this, almost like a diet break or mini rebound in the middle.
no, well, one year, you know, when I did a show in July and then did the Olympia in September, I had, like, I think 12 weeks in between, but I probably could have gotten away with eating more in between. So yeah, no, this will kind of be the first time where I haven't gotten on stage first.
Yeah.
And I'll hopefully have the balls to, you know, just not be afraid to eat and just really see what I can do.
Because I've watched, especially being home and in the different, you know, quarantine situations, I've gone back and watched some of the old prep series that you did with Animal. And I feel like you're notorious at this point for probably keeping the foot on the gas maybe too long.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, it's been just something from day one, where probably my biggest fear is getting on stage and not being in shape. I was never afraid of not being big enough, which isn't to say that I've ever even maybe been the biggest guy on stage. But I was always afraid of being fat, much more than I was afraid of being small. So I've gotten on stage in varying degrees of condition, but I don't think I've ever gone on stage out of shape. And I never will, because that's just such a fear of mine. So yeah, I mean, I do have that tendency, but as I go on, as I've gotten older, I'm a little bit more, not quite as afraid of it. I'm more willing to probably, take certain risks in terms of eating and, whatever. So I don't know. Hopefully it'll be different this time.
Do you guys think that there will be an Olympia logically? Because I hear all kinds of. I mean, there's a million groups talking online about it, and personally for me, I think the Expo is not going to happen. I think that they're just not in 2020 going to allow that kind of convention to go on. But I think that if everything calms down this summer, I feel like that they can at least have the show under some kind of modified thing. What do you guys agree with that or disagree with that?
At the rate things are going, it's really tough to say. I think the only thing that's going to turn things around is if, you hear discussion about the combination of the two drugs, hydroxychloroquine and, zithromycin. So if something comes out that shows, okay, the combination of those two drugs is enough to keep people out of hospitals and keep them from dying, then I think at that point, I think in the name of saving the economy, I think everybody kind of has to get on with life and get back to work. So long as there is some kind, because I don't think you're going to avoid this virus. I think no matter how long we quarantine, I think the minute we come out of it, I think it's going to boom again. So I think the only way to approach it is to have something to deal with it, because obviously everyone can't bombard the hospitals and take up ventilators. So I think really what needs to happen is some kind of treatment. And I do think there will be some treatment, whether it's some combination of, currently existing drugs. So I think I bet you we're not far off from that. And so long as that's the case, I think we'll all get back to work and get on with life as usual. So to answer your question, yeah, I do think there would be an Olympia.
Joe, what do you think?
I don't know, man. There's so much uncertainty, and there's so much. I feel like there's just so much varying information from what should be the sources that we are supposed to be able to trust. It doesn't seem like even the people that you would hope to be able to trust at this point have a really good grasp on what's going on or a timeline, because it changes all the time. And it's really just going to be up to the virus. I mean, they can come in and say, oh, well, we're shooting for this date and we're shooting for this date and we're shooting for this. And, that's fine. You can shoot for whatever you like, but I don't know. I think the only way that we see sporting events at all this year is without any attendance. And you're going to need to secure testing, whatever the federation is, whether it's the IFBB or Major League Baseball or whatever the case is. They're going to need to secure their own testing to say, okay, we tested all of our athletes and all these athletes are clean. All the expediters are clean. All the judges are clean. The coaches are clean. And then we're going to go forward with this without an audience. I don't really know. I mean, I don't know that any of us know.
Yeah, it changes so quickly. What it was 3 weeks ago is not what it is today, and hopefully it continues that trend on down. But it's like it's a very weird time because it's hard to imagine these sports not happening, the Olympia not happening, like a lot of things. I know this is a small segment of the population that even pays attention to sports, compared to the rest of the United States and the world, but. It's a very weird time that something could just like destroy everything.
Now, let me ask you, let's say that they come in and, is there any point for you where if they move New York back again, you would just view it then as like your own personal race to just be in your best shape? And then, you know what I'm saying? Like, let's say they move it, they're unsure. They say, okay, we're going to try for November for New York. Or let's say they just cancel it at all.
Right.
So a different situation from that, like kind of diet break rebound that we talked about. Your season's over. You're going to get in, you're going to get into your best condition and a look that you're proud of.
Yeah.
From there, what is the big Evan Centopani rebound look like? Like the full on, what is that rebound?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a full on rebound at that point. What does it look like in terms of?
Yeah, like what have you done in the past that you've seen that you like? And because like before we were saying, there's so many different strategies. Is it something that you walk up slowly and you're trying to milk out that conditioning for as long as you can? Is it something that you just put a surplus back in right away and it's to fuel the training, and whatever the conditioning does, it does?
There's certain things with me that dictate, I guess right off the bat, right? I never eat like really shitty food.
Yeah.
So I'm never going to come out of a prep and just start eating a bunch of crap. So that's a factor right there. Yeah. So I know, okay, I'm not going to be eating a lot of lousy food. I will obviously ramp up the amount. How much? Again, that's dictated by, a lot of times once I finish a prep, I'm pretty hungry. Yeah. But sometimes I'm not. Like if I was doing it the way we're talking about doing it, where I've been teetering on the edge and trying to see how much food I get away with, I don't know how much of a rebound there's going to be, because I'm at that point, I'd probably already be eating so much.
Right.
Because I've had preps I've come out of like that too, where I went into the show eating so much that once it was over, I just wanted to stop freaking eating. So I didn't really catch hardly any rebound at all. And then, there's some guys that are of the school of the thought, I'm going to rebound, but I'm going to stay on everything chemically to drive all that. That was never my feeling. I always viewed it as, okay, if I've been in a calorie deficit, I've been dieting hard, I can come off everything, let the calories do the work, and I won't even feel the fact that I'm off. Right. So for me, it was always a perfect opportunity to get, a good 12 weeks in of being on nothing, and not even notice the absence of it. So there's that aspect too. So, me coming out of it is basically, okay, I'm probably on nothing. Depending on food, the food would depend on, I guess, how much I've been eating when I'm dieting. And it's if I even have a freaking appetite.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I saw...
my rebounds are never massive. I've seen guys, and they put on 30 pounds, 40 pounds, and I don't know. It's never been my thing, but a lot of it, again, is because of the way I diet, and then also the way that I eat. And, maybe some guys just have bigger appetites than me too.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Like being able to come off everything, and like we talked about, let the food fuel it, and then the training too. Like I think you should see it, once body fat becomes way less extreme, your leverages come back, I think, a little bit, and the training you should be getting crazy pumps and strength. I saw it firsthand with Gary last year on a really good blueprint on it, because he came out of his contest season, came off everything, and, just through continuing to train, the food going up, continuing your cardio, and being meticulous throughout, I watched him, for 10, 12, I think it might have even been 16 weeks, Gary, where he's off everything, and it's a conditioned, big, full rebound.
Great.
And then now you're healthy. And when you would have stalled at that point at 12 weeks or whatever it is, now you kick back into an off season, and it's like it just continues right on then.
You just keep going with it. Yeah.
To clear it up, I was on TRT. I didn't come off completely, but I did drop down to 200 milligrams a test a week. Got blood work and everything. I think for the first 2 weeks, I finished out like one oral that I had. I low dosed it for the first 2 weeks just because I had a little bit left over. And I wanted to just like get rid of it because I wasn't going to use it anytime soon. So I did run that, but then I went right down to, I was on TRT tests right from there. And then, I went 12 weeks, or it was actually a long time. And then that's where the big off-season bump came from, is when I went back on after you had one speed boost, and then you had a second one because people got to realize you got to leave ace in the holes for yourself.
You save that ace card, yeah.
You
can't, because people that they want to throw everything at it, and it's going to work, but it's eventually you're going to have no more cards to throw, and then you're stuck, and you're probably going to fall away at that point. So,
but we did. So I wanted to shoot the shit and talk bodybuilding with you, because we did do questions as well, and we were getting a lot of, circumstantial questions, which, it's a hot topic. Of course, it's really the only topic at this point. It's all consuming. But Gary and I picked out some questions that we thought were good, submitted ones. Gary, you have those?
Hang on 1 second. Let me look it up. Okay, the biggest one is that I came about and saw was how far, it was a question asked, how far do you think one's physique could be taken naturally? And I know that's a very varying thing, but what they probably want to know is, could you make a physique that ends up in magazines, or, you know, the way that we think they can end up, can that be done naturally?
Right. I mean, just generally speaking, first off, I mean, there's guys I've known over the years that were totally natural, and you would have swore they were on stuff. I mean, they're freaks. I mean, I don't know if any of you guys, you take a trip, you take a vacation, you go down to the islands, you know, a place like that. You see guys walking around, man, and they got cap delts and full abs, and you know they're not taking anything.
Yeah.
Probably eating bad too. They're probably eating like French fries and shit, whatever they get their hands on.
Probably eating a couple times a day. Maybe not the healthiest diet, but you know, genetically they've got it. And on the flip side, I've known guys who, man, they threw everything at it, you know, including the kitchen sink, and you would never have known that, you know, this guy was on anything. They just don't have it. So, you know, that obviously, just as a general backdrop, that being said, do I think you're going to have a guy competing in the Olympia naturally? It's probably very, very, very unlikely. Make it into magazines, things like that? Sure, yeah, of course. Look fantastic, 1,000%. But it would be required, you know, you've got to have the genetic capacity, and, you know, you've got to pull it together, of course, with the eating and everything else too. But, you know, for most people, turning pro, you know, turning IFBB pro natural would be a massive, massive challenge. You would have to be somebody fairly special. But then to go on to compete at the higher level of the sports, higher levels of the sport, very unlikely. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but not likely.
Go ahead.
What were you saying?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, you know, there's nothing worse than to be enhanced and people think you're natural. That is the ultimate disrespect. We see it all the time. I mean, you could go to any commercial gym. People, you know, that don't really know have asked me, "Is this guy on steroids?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, he's huge." And I said, let me put this in perspective for you. I'm willing to bet that 50% of commercial gym men have tried some form of steroid or are on steroid at some point in their life. I said, and you would never even know that they go to the gym, let alone train and look like they're a gym guy. You wouldn't even know that. And they've tried steroids. It's just the way that the world is and the access is now. So for somebody to be taking this stuff actively and not, and you can't tell, that's the worst. The best, obviously, is the opposite, where the person's actually natural and you think they're juiced to the gills. And I'm like, that's the person that's got it all right there. You know?
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, because I know, you know, obviously the forums are dead. They're not what they were anymore, but I used to read a lot, and, you know, you would read, this guy posted this and this guy said that all pros are doing that. And that's all good and fine and good. But the biggest problem I had with a lot of that stuff is you have a lot of younger guys that would read stuff. Now, when I was 14, 15, 16, getting into weightlifting, right? I would look at the cover of a Flex magazine or any other muscle magazine, and I would ask myself that exact question you just asked me. Is this guy natural? Like, could I look like that without taking something? Because I honestly didn't know. Now, there was no harm in not knowing the answer to that. It was actually a benefit to me, because every day I got up, I believed, you know, wholeheartedly that I could achieve that. And I worked really hard. That's all good. Everyone will eventually come to the realization of what they might have to do to achieve that. But then by that time, hopefully they've already laid the foundation for good nutrition, hard training, and they believe full well in the benefits of those things. On the flip side, you've got some kid, he's 15, he's 16, he reads, oh, you're not going to accomplish anything unless you're taking X, Y, and Z and tons of it and all this stuff. That kid he should give it up before he even tries it. It's a loser. It's a total losing mentality. Yeah. So you have people out there that are talking about, telling the truth and blah, 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 blah. That's great and all, but you're not really helping anyone if what they take away from that is that they have to take everything under the sun just to go compete in a local contest. You're doing that person actually a massive disservice.
I think it's funny too, because those conversations are always like, well, this is the truth about what pros are taking.
Yeah.
And it's always, like you said, more often than not, it'll be an extreme cycle that someone needed just to try to win, their state title.
Yeah, and it's something insane, something that
right.
Like if I showed it to like my colleagues in the sport, they would look at me like I had 5 heads. Like they've never done something like that. And the problem is a lot of this shit that gets written, that gets spoken, it's being delivered through the lens of someone who is not a pro and essentially someone who doesn't have it.
Right.
So what they're saying is what they're speaking from is personal experience and a lack of success. Yeah. And what they're saying is, I couldn't hack it. I didn't get a good result from X amount. So if that guy looks like that, he must be taking 10 times what I took. And that's actually not the way it works.
Yeah, I think people really discredit genetic response to drugs when they get in this conversation. I don't know for sure, but there's a reason that Dexter Jackson has been in this sport for as long as he has and as healthy as he's been. I just think he has besides all the other things, I think he has a ridiculous genetic reaction to drugs. I don't think that Dexter Jackson has ever taken a large amount of drugs. He's probably taken at some points maybe intermediate amounts, but not these like lists that people see online. You don't do that for 25 years.
Yeah, and not to just attribute it to drugs either. I'm sure he has a tremendous response to eating, to training. Yeah. He probably responds very well. He probably he's probably one of those people who looked very good before he ever took anything.
He probably looked good before he ever worked out. I mean, there's kids I remember seeing in the locker room. No, I'm not discrediting it, but when you're top 1% of the top 1%, the way that Dexter has been for decades,
right?
I'm not taking anything away from the work that the man has done for the last 40 plus years. All I'm saying is I'm thinking when you saw him, playing sports at 12, he probably had shoulders and abs like no one that you'd ever seen at 10 or 12.
The bottom line is that Dexter Jackson was meant to be a bodybuilder. He has the goods. So, and that's great because that's what enables him to have the long-term career that he's had. I mean, there's nothing better than that. I don't think he's ever had any significant injuries or muscle tears. Yeah. The fact that he's been able to go at it, train, eat, do what he's got to do, and be one of the best in the world and do it for such an extended period of time, it's awesome to see.
Yeah, I mean, you don't see a lot of this anymore with like the conversations with kids. And like when I first started lifting in 2006, we didn't ask questions like this. We didn't. This came a few years into lifting, and it was kind of like researching on the forums alone. I mean, I was trying to like pick up information and very early on, but the questions that I get, because I coach kids here and there, a lot of people come through my Instagram and ask about coaching, and the first thing that most of them ask about is drugs. And I'm like, I said, we can't even get to that conversation yet until you tell me what you're eating. And they usually don't have a diet. They say, I eat a lot of chicken and rice. I'm like, I need amounts. I say, you don't even have a food scale yet. I said, how are we going to talk about drugs if you don't have a food scale?
How many guys I've trained in the gym, they've come to me and, they want to talk about gear, and I put them through a workout, and after 15 minutes, and I'm not trying to punish them. Okay. I'm not going crazy or anything, I'm just taking them through a normal workout, and they're throwing up, they're laying down, they don't know if they can continue. And I'm thinking to myself, if you feel like this right now, you must train like a real pussy on a regular basis. But you're taking everything under the sun. You put all this emphasis on drugs, but you don't even know how to properly exert yourself physically in the gym. I mean, this is absurd.
I think the training, honestly, is the number one thing that is missed. And then I think it's really like because it's so often missed, it's almost like it's the missing piece. Like,
Yeah.
what I mean by that, of course, it's not 80-20 diet training or, 70-10-20 drugs training. It's all part of it, right?
The
But
way I see it,
I think the training unlocks it. Like it all starts with the training.
of course,
So if you
training,
aren't maximizing what you can possibly get out of yourself just from, at the end of the day, what do? We lift weights and train. So if you're not nailing that first, I could look at your training and say, okay, well, you're not going to get a full response even from your diet, even if it's on paper, it's perfect. Everything's timed perfectly and great amounts, and it's this much surplus. If it's not unlocked first by the training and the stimulus, I don't think you're even getting a full response from the food, and then of course not the drugs then either.
the way it works is like this. It goes training, food, drugs. Training creates the need for food. Drugs drive the food. That's all it is. It goes right in that order.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, a lot of people ask me about, even my success with this like last off season, and this is honestly the first off season that I could say that I took training fully seriously. Not that I didn't. I used to be a pump guy. If I had a crazy pump, then I was accomplished. I didn't really worry about poundages and progressing each. I certainly did not value recovery, and that you don't have to do a million things in the gym, especially for my legs, which always lacked. You don't need to do a million things, but do less things more intensely. And then, and I focus on that, and everything came together. I was always good at dieting. Even in off season, I was extremely strict. It's just how I am, but that was the missing piece. And I think that years ago, training was better. I think dieting was worse. I think that guys weren't as good. I'm talking about bodybuilding. I remember Jay Cutler early on said the diet is the most important thing. I think back then guys clanged and banged in the gym a lot better, and their diet was fucked up. Nowadays, I think with all the resources online, people are better at constructing their diets. They have coaches, but the coaches aren't there in the gym, and they're training like absolute sissies.
That's the thing. I mean, people, they'll contact me and they'll say, do you write training programs? And I'm like, no, it's a fucking waste. I could put on paper, do this exercise, this number of sets and reps. It means nothing, because if I'm not there showing you and pushing you to the point of total overload, you know what I mean?
Right.
Forcing reps, things like that, it's worthless. It's not what's written. It's how it's executed.
Right. I could write hack squat 1 set to failure.
Yeah, and it means nothing.
If you do it right, it's going to ruin your day and the coming days. Or you could look at it and say 1 set to failure, and then the first time you shake a little bit on the way down, you're like, okay, that's the end of this set.
Yeah.
That's not much.
I can't tell you how many people I've put through workouts, and at the end of the workout, go through and say, what did we do? And say, well, geez, we did 2 sets of this, we did 8 or 9 sets, right?
Yeah.
And look how fucked up you are. You told me that normally you do
30 sets,
20 sets, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So it's how it's done. It's the intensity and it's the overload. And it's really pushing yourself past that discomfort. And it's hard. It's hard to do.
Ev, I got one for you. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. But this is a question that we got from a younger guy. And I think that this is a good one coming from someone like you that's such an ambassador for not only the sport, but just what it is to be somebody that takes care of your shit on a daily basis. But this one of the guys wrote in and wants to know what you think the effects of bodybuilding or how it affects marriages and relationships. And then, have you ever, to that same token, whatever the effects are, and then have you ever looked at your bodybuilding and thought, I almost wonder, is this not worth it to put my family or my loved ones through this?
Well, I think obviously every relationship is different. The way that I bodybuild and maybe the way that I respond to things might be different than the way someone else does. The person that someone else is with, how understanding are they of things? I mean, I think it's much more difficult at an amateur level because, whoever your significant other is or your girlfriend or whatever it is going to have a hard time understanding you making all these sacrifices and, maybe putting your health in jeopardy, spending, it's an expensive sport. It takes up a lot of time. It's limiting, I can't do this, I can't eat that, etc. Would have a lot of significant others would have a difficult time swallowing that when there's no monetary reward. The point at which it becomes a career and there's money coming in or whatever, then I think a lot of people say, okay, well, it's a job, and any job takes time and sacrifice and all those things. So I think that's a large part of it. But then I think also, like I alluded to a minute ago, I think a lot of it is how you do it. There might be some guys, they compete and, maybe they're miserable, maybe they're really nasty. Maybe, a lot of it too depends on your significant other. You might have two people who both require a lot of attention, or both of them want to be at the forefront. Both of them want to be in the limelight. And, I think for some people, maybe some females, I think it's probably much more common in a relationship that a female gets more of the attention or, things like that. And how does a girl then handle maybe being with a guy when they go out someplace and maybe the guy's getting more attention? So a lot of it really depends on, I think, the two personalities involved. And I don't know, look, everyone I think has different needs, different things they want in a relationship. So I think it all depends on how it jives.
No, I
think no matter what, no matter who you're with or how good you go about it, I would say that bodybuilding might be one of the tougher things to be in a relationship with someone who's doing it, because it is very limiting. We can't, I can't join you in this meal. Maybe we're not going to go out to eat here. I don't know, things like that.
I think it just takes so much from you too. It requires so much energy that when fatigue, I think, hits a certain level, for me, I have a hard time conjuring up the energy, even just for polite interactions.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you reach the point you just don't want to talk. I mean, numbers will come up on my phone, calls, and I'm just like, I just don't want to talk. It can be, I'm sure guys, and listen, I'm sure that obviously there's sports much more brutal than bodybuilding, guys who do MMA and things like that are under really severe physical stress and maybe extremely restrictive dieting. So, I don't want to sit here and sound, be dramatic, but yeah, man, it kicks your ass.
Because I remember seeing on one of the old Arnold prep videos, they had asked you, like, what's a good meal that you have after a show or whatever the case is. And you were like, I don't even care what I'm eating. I just want to be around my family. And it's not about the food, but it's about being present, because you mentioned that when you're really fatigued in prep, that you just kind of lose a feeling of being present around other people, even if you're in a room with other people.
Yeah, I mean, maybe some people don't,
Is that something that's changed for you? Like, have you noticed now that you maybe have grown and, you've been through it X amount of times now, and you're more mature and you're at a different spot in your life and you're a dad and all these things.
Right.
Is that something that you've found that has changed or that you're more mindful of maybe?
Yeah, you definitely try to be more mindful of it. You say, me, I've got two kids. You don't, you come home, they're happy to see you, or, they want to do something. You don't, in your mind, you might be like, fuck. But, you don't want to tell them no. So it's like, all right, dude, suck it up, man. Your kids want to see you. They want to do something. So, you try to be mindful of it. You try to be mature. But yeah, I mean, that feeling is still there. I mean, it's kind of unavoidable. It beats your ass. And at least for me, heading into a show, as the show gets closer and closer and closer, kind of the gravity of it becomes greater and greater. In your mind, that's where you are all the time. That's what you're thinking about, because you have to get up there in your fucking underwear in front of a crowd of people and literally be judged, and then be judged in other ways too. So yeah, it can be really stressful, and it's hard to not have it be on your mind all the time. So it kind of leaves less room for other things.
Hey, have you noticed that? Like how that's a great way of putting it, like that the gravity of it almost grows as you get closer, just mentally. Like it's constantly pulling your brain to thinking of every little aspect. Have you noticed now, like being home, that it's even worse for you?
Oh, no, but I'll be honest. Well, obviously now having more time, the show being postponed took a lot of stress off.
True. Yeah.
But it's been an easier prep. I don't know. I've dropped almost 30 pounds.
Yeah.
From the time I started, and it's like it just fucking fell off. So it's not, I'll be honest, I haven't had to like kill myself or anything like that. So it hasn't, at this point, I still feel fresh. It hasn't beat me up at all.
Yeah.
Joe, I think, and Evan, I think that as you go on, and did multiple preps, you handle that hunger a little bit. We all have our moments where we freak out or like sit in our car and don't want to get out and stuff like that. But I remember my first prep in 2010, and my buddy said, he goes, "You were so ridiculous. You were screaming at people from the treadmill at the gym." And I was very immature, and like I just couldn't handle it. I was on a crash diet. My coach did not have me where I needed to be, and it was just like I just didn't know what it was like, and I was just like a nightmare to be around. And I've never been like that since. And every prep I've gotten better to the point where, like, my last prep was 2018, but I was working at Universal. Joe was working there as well. He just started at the time, but we were still like handling work. The last week we took off, for our show and stuff like that. But it gets, for anybody watching that's like thinking about doing their first show, it might be tough, but it does get better.
Totally, dude. First prep is brutal. It kicked my ass. And it just got better and better ever since. You reach a point where you're like, all right, the next meal, it's food. Shut up, eat it. Who cares?
Yeah.
I mean, just fucking shut up and do it. You don't
stop focusing on that bullshit. You stop watching the Food Network with the cupcakes and stuff. That is noob shit. Watching all that stuff, like now it's like
that shit is so weak. When I see competitors posting pictures of fucking, this is where we're going. You got 9 weeks left. You still got a bunch of fat hanging off your waist. What are you looking at cupcakes for?
I remember there was a kid backstage with me making reservations. It was a local show. He was making reservations for a restaurant after the show, and we didn't even start prejudging yet. And he was in my weight class, and I looked at my buddy next door, and I'm like, I'm going to smoke this kid. And he took like 4. I won the class, but it was like that right there should tell you everything about somebody's character in terms of.
I thought you were going to say he beat you.
No, he was not a. He looked good, but I did well that show.
He beat your ass, and then he was out on his way to his reservation. Cheesecake Factory.
Yeah, you stop, like, you don't care about that stuff anymore because you want it, but it's like your will to win and your desire to win. You become a better bodybuilder every show. You hope that you do it mentally.
I also feel like we have a responsibility to the people that put up with us and our loved ones and everything. If you aren't growing from each of your preps and you're still just a, mentally unstable, whiny punk, 6 preps in the same way that you were the first one, this is probably not the best thing for you or your family.
Yeah.
If you haven't come to terms with the fact that you signed up for this and you are choosing by the moment to do this, at any point, Ev, you could walk upstairs and put down a gallon of ice cream and say, I'm done with this.
Of course.
You know?
Yeah, no, that's the thing to remember. Like, you chose to do this, so
Yep.
pretty much fucking shut up.
Yeah. Yeah.
This prep is going to be interesting for me only because my son's turning 5 in a week, and he's very interested in bodybuilding at this point. He comes to the gym. He follows everything that I'm doing. I mean, he tucks his tank top in his pants like I do. He walks by, he looks at me, just give me a look and starts flexing. So knowing that he's watching me and like mimicking me, the role model aspect is a lot different than when he was a baby and he didn't know what the hell was going on. It was just me. So it's going to be, you kind of have to keep him in a positive environment because he's watching every move that I make with this prep. And consequently, the ones following this are going to be probably even more, you know, pending that he still likes it. Joe, you frozen? I thought your screen froze, Joe.
I did. Yeah, no, I froze.
Yeah, it's
but with Lucas though, it's going to be so important for you because he's going to imitate every little thing. So if you come home and you're talking all crazy and you're hungry and or whatever the case is, you can bet that tomorrow he's gonna repeat that and talk to Melissa like that just because Dad's a bodybuilder and that's what he saw Dad do. That's what bodybuilders do.
He wanted to shave his head because he thought all bodybuilders shave his head. So he got a tube. I buzzed his hair with a number 2 on yesterday, and he goes, "This is a bodybuilding haircut." I'm like, whatever, man. But he's like a sponge, and they pick up everything. And if he's paying attention to me, that my role is a lot greater at this point than to not come home and start kicking holes in the sheetrock and shit like some of these guys do when they get hungry. So it's like you can't ruin your family over this stuff, especially when they support and are somewhat interested in it, you know?
Right. Yeah. But all right, I think that's a good spot to wrap up here, guys. We're closing in on an hour. So Ev, I just want to thank you. I know where you're at with your diet and everything, and I know you're home with your family and everything. So I just want to say thank you for taking the time to do this for everyone at Animal, as always.
Thank you for having me.
G6, appreciate you coming on as well. Animal Nation, we're out. Take care, guys, during the quarantine. Thanks for following along, and stay tuned for next time, guys. Take care. Thanks.
Yeah.